Have you ever seen a leaf fall in autumn? It doesn't struggle. It doesn't fight the wind. It simply lets go. Not because it gave up, but because it understood the rhythm of life. We humans often do the opposite. We cling to success, to identity, to unmet expectations, and to that lingering sense that we're still not enough. We keep striving to become someone more lovable, more successful, more worthy of being seen. And in that race, we forget the most basic truth, that who we are right here, right now, is already whole. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from clinging. But when we release not by giving up, but by opening up, that's when life begins to unfold in the most unexpected ways. This video explores a forgotten Buddhist truth. The more you let go, the more life gives you back, not in the way you expect, but in the way you truly need. 1. You are the mountain, not the one trying to climb it. Have you ever climbed a mountain? The higher you go, the thinner the air. Every step gets heavier, every breath more difficult. And you keep thinking, if I can just reach the top, then I'll be enough. Then I'll have worth. Then I'll be loved or finally at peace. But what if what you're searching for at the peak has been quietly waiting at your feet all along? What if it's not out there but already inside you? I'm not saying this as some vague philosophy. I've seen it in hundreds of stories, in thousands of souls chasing a better version of themselves, only to arrive at the same revelation. You don't need to become anyone else. You just need to remember who you are. You're not the one climbing the mountain. You are the mountain. Sounds abstract? Then pause with me for a moment. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what made you believe you weren't enough? Who was the first to plant that seed in your heart? That you must prove, achieve, or perfect something in order to be worthy. How many burdens have you carried for years? The expectations of your family, the comparisons from society, the regrets of old failures, and the fear that if you don't constantly become a better version of yourself, you'll be left behind. I understand. I've felt it too. And I've seen people in their 40s, 50s, even in their 70s, still quietly wondering, am I good enough yet? But my friend, the Buddha never said, you must become someone else. He taught us to return to our true nature, the mind that is already wise, already grounded, already whole. Like a mountain, even when it's covered in clouds or shaken by storms, its essence never changes. You don't need to become strong. You are strong. You don't need to earn your worth. Your presence already matters. You've just forgotten. People often say, I'm trying to find myself. But I ask you, how do you find something that was never lost? You were never lost. You were just buried under layers of expectations, fears, and definitions given to you by others. And when you gently brush off those layers, through mindfulness, compassion, and coming home to yourself, you'll see your original light again. Not needing to be fixed, not needing to be improved, just remembered. And when that happens truly deeply, you'll feel a weight lift, as if you finally set down a burden you didn't know you were carrying. Light like a leaf in autumn, not clinging, not resisting the wind, just falling when it's time. I'm not saying you shouldn't grow. But what I am saying is, don't trade yourself away, trying to meet someone else's standard. You can grow, you can evolve, but let it come from fullness, not from fear. From today forward, may you begin to see yourself through new eyes, the eyes of understanding, the eyes of loving kindness. No longer a seeker of the mountain, but someone who knows you are the mountain. Steady, silent, whole. There's no need to climb anywhere. Just pause and remember. 2. Each breath is a doorway home. No noise, no fanfare, no need for rituals or complicated techniques. Just this simple awareness, breathing in. I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out. I know I'm breathing out. That's it. And yet this simplicity is the most profound path back to ourselves. Have you noticed how often we're pulled away in modern life? A message, a meeting, a memory, a worry about something that hasn't even happened. We drift like a leaf carried by a rushing river. And when we're swept away, we don't choose. We react. We don't act mindfully. We operate on autopilot. But the moment you pause and return to a conscious breath, you've stepped out of that current. The breath so familiar it's often ignored is actually the key to a quiet return. A return to what? To yourself. To this moment, the only place life is truly happening. You don't need to retreat to a forest. You don't need to meditate all day. You only need in this moment to remember to breathe mindfully. To remember you are alive. You are here. Every time you take a conscious breath, you're training something deeply important, the power to choose. To choose not to follow every emotion. To pause before reacting. To step out of old patterns and into presence. To see clearly, then act. I once met a woman at a retreat in California. Middle-aged, successful, but exhausted. She told me, I've been running for years, from work to home, from being a mother, a wife, a daughter. And even when I sit still, my mind keeps running. I don't even know what peace feels like anymore. I didn't give her any complex teachings. I just invited her to come back to her breath. Every time she noticed her mind running, gently return. No judgment, no pressure. Just recognize and return. A few days later, she approached me on a quiet morning, eyes teary. I'm not running anymore, she said softly. I'm here. You see, it doesn't take anything dramatic. Just one deep breath, fully felt, fully lived. In Buddhist teachings, this is known as mindfulness of breathing, a practice taught by the Buddha himself to thousands of disciples. Not to turn meditation into something mystical, but to simply bring the mind home, to the present, to the self. And you can start anytime, while washing dishes, driving, listening to someone speak. Instead of letting your mind wander, gently bring it back to the breath. Each inhale and exhale like a quiet tide, reminding you you are alive and you're choosing to be awake. And here's the beautiful part. As you become more mindful, the world around you begins to shift. Not because it changes, but because you do. Like a still lake reveals its depth, your still mind begins to see the truth. Calmly, clearly. I know sometimes even one breath can feel hard, because reactivity is deeply ingrained. But let me gently remind you, you can begin again anytime with just a single breath. One breath taken with awareness, with presence, with care, is enough to come home. No need to wait for tomorrow. No need to wait until everything is perfect. Right now, you can pause, breathe, and return. 3. True happiness doesn't come from gaining more, but from letting go. I know. That might sound completely backward from what you were taught growing up. We're told from a young age that happiness is something you earn, something you chase, that you have to strive to push to achieve more success, more money, more recognition. And so you keep walking through life, carrying an invisible suitcase, the heavy burden of becoming someone. But have you ever paused and asked yourself, after all I've achieved, why don't I feel at peace yet? There was a man who came to one of my retreats in the American West, a successful businessman, expensive car, beautiful home, a resume anyone would admire. But his eyes were tired, and he said to me quietly, I have everything, but I don't feel alive. I wasn't surprised, because I've heard that sentence many times before. You see, so many of us live as if happiness is somewhere ahead of us. When I get that promotion, then I'll feel relieved. When my kids are successful, then I can finally relax. When I retire, then I'll really start living. But even when those things come, that relief, if it appears at all, is brief. Then we set a new goal, another mountain to climb, and the cycle continues. Always more, always next, never enough. Here's the real question. Is it the lack of achievement that exhausts us? Or is it the belief that we must achieve in order to feel worthy of peace? That belief, not our circumstances, is the true root of our suffering. The Buddha, in the Four Noble Truths, pointed to this clearly. The cause of suffering is attachment, our clinging, craving, grasping. We don't suffer because of life itself. We suffer because the mind won't let go. We cling to an image of how things should be, a version of ourselves we must become, a plan that has to succeed, an identity that must be better than others. But here's the paradox. Only when we release that grasping, not by giving up, but by softening our hold, can peace begin to appear. Now, I'm not saying you should throw away all your dreams or goals, not at all. But I'm inviting you to look again. Are you carrying too many things that no longer serve your well-being? Happiness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from lightening the load inside. Think of a mountain climber. If they believe carrying more makes them more prepared, they may collapse from exhaustion before reaching the summit. But those who know how to let go of what's unnecessary, they go farther. They move with ease, and they enjoy the view along the way. You don't have to wait until everything is perfect to be happy. Because if you do, you might be waiting your whole life. True happiness arises when you release the need for everything to be okay and accept yourself fully, even in the mess. I understand that's not easy. The voices of society, family, even your own ego will whisper, not enough. Try harder. You still have more to prove. But if you never pause to ask, am I living or just constantly chasing. Then you may spend your whole life running and never arriving. Letting go is not weakness. Letting go is wisdom. Because you realize wholeness doesn't come from adding more to your life. It comes from removing what no longer nourishes your peace. 4. Act from wholeness, not from fear. So many things we do in life aren't truly born from stillness. They come from a quiet fear sitting deep in our hearts. We study because we're afraid of falling behind. We work because we're afraid of being judged. We strive, not always out of passion, but out of fear of being unseen. And even in love, sometimes we love because we're afraid to be alone, afraid of being left. Day by day, we begin to lose the natural joy in what we do. Even the good things start to feel like masks, like performances, like hidden messages saying, "Am I enough? Am I worthy of love?" When our actions are fueled by fear, even if we succeed, there's still no peace, because the root of it all is still emptiness, still unrest. I once met a man in his 50s. He was the director of a major company. He came to a meditation retreat with a heavy face full of thought. During one sharing session, he said, "I've worked my whole life. I never took a break. But the higher I climbed, the emptier I felt." I asked gently, "What keeps you from stopping?" He replied softly, "I'm afraid. If I stop proving my worth, people will forget me." That answer stayed with me for a long time, because he wasn't alone. That quiet fear lives in so many of us. We give, we work, we sacrifice, but underneath it all is a whisper. If I stop trying, I'll stop mattering. But have you ever asked yourself the opposite? What if you did something, not to prove anything, not to gain approval, but simply because it felt true to who you are? Let me tell you this. When you act from inner fullness, everything feels lighter, more natural. No need to impress, no need to overdo. Life begins to flow, like a river, from its source, like flowers blooming in the right season. Just like the sun doesn't shout to prove it's shining, it simply shines, and its light reaches everything. Like an artist who paints not for praise, but because in painting, their soul comes alive. Or a father who cares for his child, not to be called a great dad, but simply because love overflows in him, and caring is the most natural thing. That's what it means to act from wholeness, not to become something, not to prove your worth, but just to live in truth with who you already are. The truth is, when fear no longer drives you, you stop rushing, you stop forcing, you stop needing validation. And ironically, that's when recognition tends to arrive, effortlessly without you chasing it. I'm not saying you should stop striving, but I invite you to ask yourself, where is your effort coming from? From an empty space that needs to be filled, or from a heart that's already full and wants to give that small difference? Is the line between burnout and inner freedom? You don't have to prove anything. Your honest presence is already a gift. And when you act from that place, from truth, not fear, life starts to invite you into a softer, warmer, and far more peaceful rhythm. 5. Letting go is not giving up. It's trusting life. When people hear the phrase, let go, they often think it means giving up giving and becoming passive or falling into despair. But in Buddhist wisdom, letting go doesn't mean walking away from life dreams or responsibilities. It means releasing the need to control, letting go of the urgency, letting go of the pressure to have everything figured out to be enough to force outcomes on your timeline. Let me paint you a simple image. When you plant a seed in the soil, do you dig it up every day to see if it's growing? Of course not. You plant it, you water it, you nurture it, and then you trust. You trust the soil, you trust time, you trust that life will do what life does quietly beneath the surface. Letting go is just like that. You do your part with sincerity and presence. And then you allow space. You let life unfold in its own rhythm. You stop forcing. You stop overthinking. You stop trying to control every detail. You soften. You breathe. And you trust. But trust in what? Trust that the universe has its own deep order, even if you can't see it yet. Trust that when your heart is calm, what's meant for you will arrive in its own time. Trust that some things don't need chasing, because when the time is right, they come to you. I once met a woman in her 40s. She shared that after a painful divorce, she couldn't let go. She kept asking, "Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? How do I make him come back?" She tried everything to fix it, to analyze it, to control it, to explain it. And the more she tried, the more lost and exhausted she became. Then one day, during a silent meditation retreat, she just sat. No more questions. No more trying to peek into the future. Just breath. Just presence. She told me, "I realized I don't need to know everything. I just need to believe that I'll be okay, even if I don't know what's coming." And from that moment, her life began to shift. She felt lighter, but also deeper. You see, letting go is not failure. It's a profound act of spiritual maturity, because only when you truly trust do you have the courage to let go. Those who don't trust cling, and sometimes it's that very clinging that keeps the flower from blooming. In Buddhist teachings, there's a beautiful word, saddha. It means faith, but not blind faith, not waiting for miracles to fall from the sky. It's grounded trust, built on mindfulness, understanding, and lived experience. When you live mindfully, you start to see clearly. There are things that will never come, no matter how hard you push. And there are things that only arrive when you stop grasping. Think back to the major turning points in your life. Many of them weren't planned right, but they happened. And the moment you stopped trying to control everything, the path opened up in ways you never expected. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It means not losing yourself in the doing. You still care. You still take action. You still show up. But you do it from a grounded place, not from anxiety, not from rushing, not to prove anything, not to win anything, but from a heart that trusts deeply. You don't have to know the entire future to feel peaceful. You just need enough trust in the present, enough trust that if you're living honestly, kindly, and mindfully, then whatever comes next will be part of your path. And here's the paradox. Letting go doesn't mean you lose. It means you open, like a hand that's been clenched too tight. When it finally relaxes, it becomes wide enough to receive something new. 6. What you carry. inside, colors the world you see. The world you see isn't always a reflection of what's happening around you. More often, it's a mirror of what's happening within you. Have you noticed when your mind is anxious or unsettled, even the brightest sunny day can feel gray? And when you're afraid, every little thing, someone's glance, a passing comment can feel like a threat or a wound. But then there are days when the sky is overcast, your to-do list is long, and things aren't going quite right. Yet you feel a strange calm, a soft peace inside. Maybe it's because you meditated for just 10 minutes that morning. Or maybe you simply remembered that you're alive, breathing, and here. And somehow, that felt enough. What does that tell us? That our joy or suffering doesn't come mainly from the outside world. It comes from the inner landscape we carry. The world is not the cause. It is a mirror. What you carry in your heart, fear, gratitude, resentment, peace, shapes how the world reflects back to you. I remember one quiet morning in a small garden in Oregon. The air was cool. Dew still clung to the leaves. A group of us sat in meditation outdoors. Afterward, each person shared their experience. One said nature looks so unusually beautiful today. Another whispered, I felt peace like something inside me was healing. But there was also a man who looked frustrated. He said, I felt nothing, just mosquitoes. I couldn't relax at all. Same place, same moment, but completely different worlds because each of their minds was in a different place. That's the power of our inner lens. I get it, it's hard to notice beauty when your mind is tangled in worry, but that's the reminder we live behind an inner lens. If that lens is dusty, the world looks dull. If it's clouded by fear, anger, or doubt, even kindness can seem suspicious. So, the real question is, what lens are you wearing to see the world today? Is it the lens of fear, making everyone seem distant and every challenge overwhelming? Or is it the lens of quiet trust, helping you see glimpses of softness and hope even in difficult times? I'm not asking you to always be positive or to see the world through rose-colored glasses. No, I'm simply inviting you to look inward whenever the world starts to feel too heavy. Because maybe, just maybe, what needs attention isn't out there. It's something inside of you quietly asking to be seen, understood, and cared for. I once spoke with an elderly woman in California. She had lived alone for many years after her husband passed away. For a long time, she said the world felt cold and distant, like life had turned its back on her. But one morning, as she sat by the window, she saw a little sparrow hopping on a branch. It wasn't singing for me, she said, but when I stopped expecting the world to offer me something, its song suddenly reached my heart. From that day on, she began watering her plants again. She greeted her neighbors. She even started rereading old poems, not because anything dramatic had changed, but because she had changed, and the world in turn softened with her. I share this story with you to say, transformation doesn't always come from big breakthroughs. Sometimes it starts with the smallest shift in your heart, quiet, invisible, but deep enough to change how you live. So next time the world feels harsh, cold, or too much pause, don't rush to blame the outside. Instead, gently ask yourself, what am I carrying inside? If it's fear, take a breath. If it's anger, take a pause. If it's doubt, shine a light of mindfulness on it. Because the moment you shift the colors inside your heart, the whole world begins to look a little different. 7. The story of the overflowing teacup, a lesson in emptiness. There's an old Zen story, simple yet deeply revealing. Every time I remember it, I feel gently reminded to return to a place of humility. The story goes like this. A well-known scholar, after years of studying texts, scriptures, and theories, decided to visit a famous Zen master to learn the way. When he met the master, the scholar immediately began to talk nonstop about everything he had read, learned, and experienced, laying out his vast understanding. The Zen master sat quietly listening. Then, without a word, he began to pour tea for his guest. The cup filled up and then kept filling. Tea began to spill over the rim onto the table and eventually down to the floor. Startled, the scholar exclaimed, "Master, the cup is full. Please stop pouring. Stop pouring." The Zen master paused, looked at him calmly, and said, "Like this cup, your mind is already full. How can I offer you anything when there is no room left to receive?" That one sentence, so simple, rang like a bell of awakening. Each of us carries an invisible cup inside. Often it's filled with old beliefs, opinions, assumptions, and experiences we think are absolute truths. But when we are too full of these, there's no space left for anything new, for truth, for insight to enter. To truly see the way. It's not about adding more. It's about letting go of what we're clinging to. Think about it. How many times in life have you heard someone say something meaningful, only to find your mind instantly respond, "I already know that. I've read that before. I've been through it. I get it." That little voice, "I already know," is the lid on your teacup. And someone with a mind that already knows everything rarely receives anything deeply. But someone who holds the attitude of, "I don't know enough yet," opens themselves up to every experience. And from that openness, true wisdom can grow. In Buddhist teachings, this is connected to a vital concept, letting go of attachment to views, which means not clinging to our opinions, old knowledge, or rigid thinking. Not because those views are wrong, but because if we hold them as the only truth, we block ourselves from receiving something deeper. I've met practitioners who've studied Buddhism for years, chanting daily, well-versed in scriptures. Yet when faced with difficulty, they still react with anger, stubbornness, and suffering. Why? Because that knowledge hasn't truly entered their hearts. It couldn't. The cup was too full of ego. On the other hand, I've seen elderly folks who never studied much Dharma. And yet, when they hear a simple teaching, tears stream down their faces. That's true, they nod, because their hearts still had space for humility, for learning, for awakening. Have you ever noticed? A child learns quickly, not because they're smarter, but because their mind is still free from layers of assumptions. They listen with their whole being. But as adults, the more life we experience, the harder it becomes to truly listen, because our old knowing constantly gets in the way. Yet the way isn't found in what you already know. The way is found in how you live. And to live the way, we must return to an empty, open heart. Emptiness doesn't mean being hollow or blank. It means being clear enough to receive. It means knowing how to empty your cup again and again. It means being humble enough to learn and courageous enough to loosen the grip of your ego, to make space for something wider, deeper. Sometimes that teaching won't come from a book or even a formal sermon. It might arrive in a deep breath, a quiet moment, a simple sentence from someone who didn't mean to teach you anything, but ended up changing you. Because only when you're truly empty can life begin to pour in something new. 8. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to be remembered. There's a well-known story in Thailand that I believe if you truly listen with your heart, you'll never forget. Long ago, in a small countryside temple, there was a statue of the Buddha made of solid gold. It was sacred, revered, and incredibly valuable. But during a time of war, as invaders swept across the land, the monks feared the statue would be stolen. So they covered it entirely with clay, disguising it to look plain and worthless. Over time, through generations of war and peace, the older monks passed away. No one left knew the truth about the statue's golden core. To the village, it became just another ordinary clay Buddha, nothing remarkable. Until one day, many years later, the temple began to deteriorate and the statue had to be moved. During the relocation, part of the clay cracked, revealing a brilliant glimmer of gold underneath. The whole village was stunned. Slowly, they chipped away the layers, and eventually, the radiant golden Buddha was revealed once more, untouched, whole, and beautiful. It had never been lost, only hidden. I share this story not because it's about a historical artifact. I share it because it's about you. Inside every one of us, there is light. There is nobility. There is a pure essence that no circumstance in life can ever truly destroy. But over the years, we've all been covered layer by fear, by wounds, by societal expectations, by family pressure, by voices that said, "You're not good enough. You have to be this to be worthy. You don't deserve it yet." One layer after another, we start to forget who we really are. And in that forgetting, we begin to believe the lie that we are broken, that we need to be fixed, that we must become someone else to be enough. But the truth is, you don't need to be fixed. You just need to be remembered. And slowly, we begin to believe the clay is who we are. We forget what lies beneath. We think we need fixing. We think we need upgrading. We think we must become someone better. But no, you don't need fixing. You need remembering. Remembering your wholeness. Remembering your light. Remembering who you were before the world told you who you were supposed to be. And do you know what helps you peel away those layers? Mindfulness. Mindfulness is the ability to return to the present moment and witness what's happening in your heart without judgment, without running, without clinging. When you live mindfully, you begin to see clearly. Oh, this is just a layer of fear. This is a layer of shame. This is a layer of expectation. And once you see them clearly for what they are, you no longer confuse them with your true self. I once met an older woman who came to the meditation center feeling heavy and tired. She said, "I've spent my whole life trying to be a good person, and still I never feel like I'm enough." Through quiet sitting, mindful breathing, mindful walking, And just gently being with her emotions, she began to recognize the clay layers in her heart. She didn't need to analyze them. She just needed to see them. She told me one day, I don't need to become someone else anymore. I just need to return to myself. That one sentence may sound simple, but it's the path of awakening. You don't need light from outside. You only need to remove the dust that's covering the light within. And when that light begins to shine again, you'll realize you were never broken. You simply forgot. You forgot. And now, it's time to remember. 9. Live as if you are already enough. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But in truth, this is a profound practice. A mindful reminder rooted in Buddhist wisdom. In Buddhism, living as if doesn't mean pretending. It's not about faking confidence or masking your pain with spiritual platitudes. It's a homecoming, a return to a truth that's always been within you, a truth you may have simply forgotten. To live as if you are already enough means this: you move through life, make choices, and take action not from a place of lack or fear or desperate longing, but from a place of inner wholeness. Now I know this might sound confusing, especially if you're still carrying wounds, doubts, or that gnawing feeling of not good enough. But listen closely, my friend. When you live from the mindset of not enough, you turn your entire life into a chase. Chasing happiness, chasing approval, chasing a sense of worth. But when you begin each day with the quiet remembrance, I am already enough just as I am, then every word you speak, every task you complete, every decision you make will be infused with something different. A sense of peace, of mindfulness, of deep trust. I remember a young woman I met at a meditation retreat. She told me that every time she went for a job interview or met someone new, she felt she had to overperform, to be flawless to prove herself, because deep inside there was always a voice whispering, "I'm not enough." And so no matter how many achievements she collected, no matter how much praise she received, she still felt hollow. I asked her, what if one day you walked into a room, not to impress, not to prove, but simply to be fully present with who you already are? What would change? She was silent for a long time. Then with tears in her eyes, she said, I think I'd feel lighter, and maybe I'd finally connect with others for real. Do you see? The shift doesn't begin on the outside. It starts deep within, with the belief that your value has never been missing. And once you remember that, you can begin living as if it's true, because it is true. There's a beautiful Buddhist metaphor. Imagine a lamp covered by cloth. The room becomes dark, and you blame the room or the time of day or the darkness itself. But the truth is, the light never left. It was only hidden. You don't need to make the light shine. You simply need to remove the layers, the doubt, the comparison, the old voices from the past. Living as if you are already enough is just like that. It's not about forcing brightness. It's about peeling back what's been clouding your light. And please remember, this is not a performance. You're not pretending to be confident or happy. You're living from a deeper truth. The truth that you already are whole. This practice requires returning to yourself over and over again. Before you react, pause and ask, if I knew I was already enough, how would I respond differently? When you're about to criticize yourself, ask, if I believed I was still worthy. What would I say to myself instead? This is not a journey to become someone. It's a journey to remember who you truly are. 10. Awakening doesn't come from books. It comes from experience. Buddhist teachings are not just theories. They're not abstract concepts to memorize, nor are they lofty philosophies meant for debates or lectures. Buddhism, at its core, is a return to the living reality you're in right now, a return to this body, this breath, this very moment passing before your eyes. You could read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of Dharma talks, memorize countless Pali or Sanskrit terms, but if you've never simply sat still, taken a deep breath, and truly felt your body and mind right here, right now, then everything you've learned is still just knowledge. It hasn't yet become lived wisdom. I once met a man in his 60s. He had read the entire Tipitaka. He could recite long passages from the Dhammapada. But one day, when his son said something he didn't like, he exploded in anger. His face red, his hands shaking, his words sharp and wounding. Afterward, he turned to me and asked, "Why do I still lack peace, even after all these years of practice?" I gently asked him back, "In that moment of anger, did you remember your breath? Did you return to your body, your mind?" He fell silent. This story is all too familiar. Not just for him, but for so many of us. We understand the Dharma, but we don't yet live it. Why? Because we keep Buddhism in our heads, but haven't yet brought it into our bodies, our hearts, our everyday reactions. The Buddha didn't leave behind a system of beliefs to worship. He left a path to walk, a way to experience and transform yourself through your own body and mind. Do you know what the Buddha said upon his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree? He didn't say, "I now understand all the concepts." He said, "I have seen." He saw the truth of suffering. He saw its root causes. He saw the path to end suffering, not through thinking, but through direct experience, through meditation, through observing the body and mind, through quietly looking inward. And just like that, you don't need to master every theory to begin. You just need to return to this moment. Let me ask you something. Are you breathing right now? Of course you are. But do you know that you're breathing? That simple question, that moment of awareness, is the doorway to awakening. Because the moment you know you're breathing, your mind stops drifting. You come back to yourself, to now, to the life flowing through every cell. Buddhist wisdom isn't found on a bookshelf. It's found in how you drink your tea. It's not about how many sutras you've memorized. It's about this. When someone hurts you, do you know that you're hurt? Do you pause before reacting? Do you take one mindful breath and look within? One time during a tea meditation, a young man asked me, "Master, how do I know if I'm truly on the path?" I didn't answer right away. I poured him a cup of tea, looked into his searching eyes, and softly said, "If at some point in your day, even just a few seconds, you're aware of your breath, your mind becomes still, and you stop yourself from reacting on impulse, then yes, you're walking the path." That is the sign of genuine mindfulness. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be long. It just needs to be real. You see, the path doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be lived in the smallest things. Mindfulness while washing dishes. Silence while walking. Presence while listening to a loved one. Noticing your emotions as they rise without being swept away. These little moments, they are the gateway to awakening. They're where the Dharma becomes part of you, not outside, but within your breath, your body, your footsteps. So if you ever wonder, I haven't studied much, I haven't read many sutras, am I practicing correctly? Let that question soften, and instead, simply ask, did I have even one moment today where I truly lived in the present? If the answer is yes, even for a few seconds, that is the beginning of awakening. Because awakening doesn't live in books. It lives in the raw, living experience you're having right now. And that path, it's always available the moment you come home to yourself. 11. Faith sada is quiet strength. When people hear the word faith, they often imagine something grand like religious belief, blind devotion, or a vague hope for something out of reach. But in Buddhism, faith, called sada in Pali, is not a fleeting emotion, nor a mental state that easily wavers. It is a quiet inner strength, a steady ground beneath your feet, helping you take the next step even when you can't yet see the road ahead. Sada is not like hope. Hope often clings to specific outcomes. It wants things to turn out a certain way. But faith in the Buddhist sense doesn't attach to results. It's a deep inner knowing that says, I may not know everything, but I know enough to keep going. It's like walking through a misty morning. You don't see the whole path, but you walk anyway because you trust that there is solid ground beneath your feet. I remember once, during a Dharma talk at a small meditation center in California, a middle-aged woman raised her hand and asked me, "Teacher, if I don't know, what will happen if the future feels so unclear? How can I have faith in anything?" I looked at her for a moment, then answered gently, "You don't need to know what will happen. You just need to know that something greater than you is holding you." And that's the root of Buddhist faith. Faith in dependent origination. Paticcasamuppada, the understanding that nothing happens randomly, but through a web of causes and conditions. You don't need to understand every link in the chain, but you can trust the process. A seed doesn't worry about when it will become a tree. It simply roots itself in the soil, reaches for the light, and quietly grows. But we humans, oh how we dig up the soil to check if it's sprouting worry every day. Will it bloom? Will it come in time? But true faith doesn't come from trying to control the outcome. It comes from knowing that we've shown up, fully planted the right seed, and done our part. The rest belongs to the earth, the wind, and time. The kind of faith I'm talking about doesn't shout. It doesn't need slogans. It's not something you declare loudly to the world, but something you whisper to your own heart on those nights when no one understands you. On those mornings when you wake up lost and you still choose to keep going. I once spoke with a man in his 70s. He told me that after his wife passed away, he felt utterly lost. Each day, felt like a song without a melody. He had no motivation to do anything, no clear reason to keep living. But somehow, he still got up early, still walked every morning, still tended to the little garden behind his house. He said, "I don't really know why I do it. I just feel like I should keep going, like something's holding me." I listened and smiled. That is sada faith without a reason. Not faith because you're certain, but faith because somehow something within you lifts you up, steadies you, and invites you forward. And the beautiful truth is this: faith isn't something you have to force. It's a natural instinct within you. If you pause long enough, listen deep enough, you'll realize you were never truly alone. You've always been supported, guided, held one way or another. But even that quiet faith needs to be nurtured, not with words, but with small, consistent actions. When you sit in meditation, and even when your mind is scattered, you gently return to the breath you are watering your faith. When you quietly cook a meal, tend to a room, or care for a loved one, you are feeding your faith. And when you stop demanding all the answers and instead say, "It's okay not to know right now," you're entering a deep kind of wisdom, the wisdom of trust. 12. You don't need to be important. You just need to be fully present. There's an old story about a humble monk who walked each morning through a small village at the base of a mountain, quietly holding out his alms bowl. The bowl was simple, old-worn with no carvings, no decorations, just an empty, ordinary bowl. One day, as he passed a group of young men gathered near the market gate, one of them pointed at the bowl and mocked, "Hey monk, why are you out begging with that empty bowl? There's nothing in there." The old monk paused, looked at the young man with gentle eyes and smiled. "Yes, the bowl is empty, but I have everything." The group fell silent. How could someone say, "I have everything," while holding a bowl that had nothing in it? No money, no possessions, no title, just a quiet, peaceful presence. But for those who have walked deeply on the path, the idea of having everything isn't tied to what you can see or touch. It's not about abundance on the outside, but fullness within. True fullness doesn't come from having more, it comes from needing less. The empty bowl becomes a symbol. Empty yet open to receive anything. Empty yet not craving. Empty, therefore light enough to move freely through the world untouched by the weight of desire. In Buddhism, the ego, this self we're constantly trying to build up, is often the heaviest burden we carry. We want to be someone, to be admired, to be remembered. But the more we try to become somebody, the further we drift from what's real. Because awakening doesn't arise from becoming important, it comes from being deeply present. When you can sit in silence, not needing to be noticed, not needing applause, and still feel peaceful and content, that's when you begin to taste unconditional happiness. I once met an elderly woman in California. She spent her days quietly tending to her vegetable garden behind the house. No one really knew her, except maybe a few neighbors. But there was a brightness in her eyes I rarely see something. I usually only witness in those who have cultivated deep inner peace. When I asked her the secret to her calm, she smiled and said, "I don't need anything more. If I wake up and see the morning sun on my squash vines and hear the breeze in the trees by evening, that's enough for me." That is the wisdom of presence. Being fully present doesn't mean doing something grand. It could be sipping your tea without your mind rushing elsewhere, washing the dishes without complaining, listening to someone not to reply, but simply to understand. The world today is loud. Everyone is busy trying to be somebody. But Buddhist teachings invite us to walk a different path. You don't have to become anyone. You just have to come back fully to yourself. Because the moment you no longer need to be important, you are finally free. The moment you stop trying so hard to be seen, you begin to feel peace. And if someone asks you, "What do you have?" you can smile gently like the old monk and say, "I have everything." Not because of wealth status or recognition, but because you hold the rarest treasure of all, an empty bowl and a full heart. When you stop chasing the need to be someone, you begin to truly hear your own soul. And in that stillness, you'll discover you don't need to stand out to have value. You don't need to be important to be loved. You only need to be fully present with sincerity, silence, and mindfulness. That is the greatest gift you can offer the world. If this message speaks to your heart, I invite you to walk with us on this journey back to simplicity, depth, and peace. Subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, where every video is a gentle reminder for your soul. If this touched you, like the video, share it with someone you love and leave a comment below. What makes you feel truly full in life? We read every word you share. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.